Ibrahim Zadran can bat. It's not always quick, but it's steady. And there's always runs there. There's technique and brains, and he knows what he's doing. And if this was a poor bowling side, it wouldn't always matter. He probably wouldn't score quick enough to always put pressure back on. But this team can seriously bowl. And so their whole plan is to let Ibrahim and Gurbaz just do their thing at the top. And then if they're anywhere near par, they think they can hold with their bowlers. It's not a brilliant tactic, and not all teams will be able to do it. But it fits Afghanistan really well. Bat first, bat steady, hold with the ball. And because they've done this so many times in T20 cricket and ODI cricket, every single player in the Afghanistan lineup at the moment knows exactly what their role is. Because this is a team that actually still plays a lot of ODI cricket when many others don't. And they take it really seriously. Like, they didn't turn up in this tournament and just chuck Jamie Smith in at number 3 to see what happens, right? This is a well-drilled 50-over machine. Whereas England, they're a bit of a clown car. And that's why one team is limping out of the tournament and the other one is running to their next game. Do you want AMAs to connect on live calls with me or engage with our dynamic Discord community? Maybe you want ad-free content, early podcast episodes, or to stay informed through my emailer. Well, if you support us on Patreon, you get all of that plus a little bit of behind the scenes, how the sausage is made stuff. Our deepest thanks go to everyone who has supported us on Patreon so far, but the more people who do means the more content we can make. So I was listening to the BBC at lunch of this game, and something really interesting was going on because the BBC were talking about a documentary they made about the Afghanistan women's team. And obviously it was in support of that, and it's a really good thing, and it's an incredible story. You should all go over and check out that documentary. But it's really interesting because when you think about it, the BBC is backing the Afghanistan women's team, and the ECB are backing it, and the MCC are backing it. Like, all the important English acronyms. Are they actually acronyms? Anyway, all the important English acronyms are backing this thing. And they were kind of talking about, you know, having to support Afghanistan and everything else. And this conversation is happening while the Afghanistan men's team, who doesn't have that level of professionalism or history or money within the game, is out on the field completely whacking the men's team anywhere. Like, even if the English team had got home in that chase, you'd have to say that they got pretty embarrassed by the Afghanistan batting beforehand. And if you didn't know anything about these two cricket teams and you were just watching this game as a sort of an outsider, which team would you think is the professional one with the big long history and the lots of money? Because England aren't a very good side at the moment. That's fine. And they've just had a new coach and he's had almost no time to prepare for this tournament. They don't play any ODI cricket. When they do play ODI cricket, it's very rarely the players who are actually involved here. But there's many different things. You've got the injuries, and lots of teams have had injuries, but outside of the games. England has managed to get a lot of injuries inside the games, which have actually changed the way that the match has been played. But even with all that aside, you watch England play and you watch Jamie Smith batting at number 3 and you watch Phil Salt sort of playing sensibly and then suddenly slogging across the line. You watch them in the middle overs sort of run out of ideas when they can't bowl bouncers anymore. And it's hard to look at this team and go, they're good at ODI cricket, they understand ODI cricket, and everyone knows what their role is. Whereas then you look at Afghanistan, and every single player out on that field, even Gulbuddin Naib, who a lot of us don't really understand why he gets picked, he knows what his job is out there, and he does it all the time. They are going to bat first, and they're going to bat slow. And they have ended up with a fairly automatic top order. It's not like the great Indian top orders and some of the others that we've seen in the history of our game. But Ibrahim Zadran is really, really tough to get out. And Ramanullah Gurbaz is a top quality player as well. And then they've got a couple of other slower guys down the order whose job is to just stay in for as long as possible. And it feels to me as an outsider like their entire batting plan is bat first and try and get to 200 for 3 and then just see what happens. Sometimes they fizzle out. On other occasions, they go okay. This was one of the rare ones where it went really, really well because that automatic top order set up the game. But when the hitters came in, they didn't go out slogging, which sometimes can happen for Afghanistan. They actually hit really well. Part of this was helped by the fact that England had injuries and were losing the plot. But a lot of it was down to they were choosing the right balls, playing very good shots, and clearing the boundaries on a wicket that was helping them. I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're Afghanistan, I don't think you can ask for a better combination than Root and Livingston bowling out the death overs, even if Livingston did bowl pretty well for his. So things went in their favor, but they still got an above par score, and they don't get that many of them. But this could have been the sort of situation where Phil Salt comes out, smashes a couple of fours, like let's say, I don't know, first ball of the game. Suddenly everything switches, and the ball's coming onto the bat on a very flat batting wicket. By the time the spinners come on, England are already ahead. But that's not what happened because The ball didn't swing, which is usually when Afghanistan seamers have their most trouble. And instead, they just bowled really smart. Like, again, if you're comparing the England seamers to the Afghanistan seamers, which ones do you think were the most skillful and the smartest? There's no real conversation there looking at today's cricket, right? And so it meant that Salt got a little bit stuck. And so he played a swipe that realistically, that's what a bowler plays in like a third 11 game, right? Like, absolutely dreadful. And then Jamie Smith came out and he seemed to be seeing the ball like a watermelon, but he was unsure what to do in his role. If Jamie Smith was playing for Afghanistan, he would have played a lot of ODIs come in and would have completely understood what they expected of him. Instead, Jamie Smith seems to hit the ball to the fielders over and over again, and the first time he sees spin, he just dances down and hits it straight up in the air. And that kind of explains England's method, right? Which is they're stuck between trying to score at like 9 runs a ball and trying to be more sensible. And they don't understand it because they had no time to prepare for it. Afghanistan have been preparing for the Champions Trophy for years now. And so even though they didn't have Naveen Ul-Haq and their spinners weren't as dominant as you would expect, like if I told you that Afghanistan beat England, you'd probably think that the spinners had really good games. And I'm not sure if any of their spinners had a great game. Maybe Noor Ahmed, but he didn't take a wicket. They all struggled a little bit. But Fazl-Haq put on a great performance, despite the fact that he was also off the field for a long period of time. But nothing compared to Omarzai. Not only did he smack the ball when he was batting, but he consistently found a way to take wickets. And he's a very good bowling prospect, but he's still not quite fully developed. Usually when he's at his best, it's because he's swinging the ball. But the ball didn't hoop around at all, and he just found this other level where he completely outthought each individual English batter. And I do mean each individual English batter, because if you have a look, he basically took wickets almost all the way through the innings. He took that first one of Salt that was really important. He took the really important one of Buttler. He took the even importanter one of Joe Root. And Jamie Overton, not usually an important wicket, but in this case looked like he was going to win the game for England. Omarzai took that too. And when England still had a chance of winning at the end, Omarzai also took Adil Rashid. 5 wickets is great, but we see lots of ODI hauls where someone gets 5 wickets and it's like, it's fine. This was a special and smart performance by an all-rounder who also smashed 41 of 31 balls when he was batting. An incredible performance. Essentially, he just seemed to take a step up during this game. And to be fair, he's always been a pretty good prospect to begin with. And during this game, he took several steps up. In the end, they had to put a ladder on top of another ladder. That's how high he was getting. But if classic Afghanistan style, despite the fact that this game probably unfurled almost exactly as they would have wanted it to, it still got chaotic. There was moments where you thought England were absolutely going to win. There were moments where there was like no way Afghanistan could lose. And then it would just flip on a moment. That's the sort of game where you expect the smaller nation to eventually just wilt, to just not work out what they were doing. Well, at every single time that England forced Afghanistan into a bad situation, it was Afghanistan who worked their way out of it. Time after time. And yes, they dropped the catch and there was a little bit of fumbling at the end. It wasn't a perfect performance, but they're not a perfect side. They do have too many batters who go too slow. They do have Gulbadine, who is essentially just the Evan Gulbis effect. And today, their spinners didn't even step up, but they found ways to be successful all the way through. And so, let's just go through what Afghanistan did today. Their top order played absolutely brilliantly to put themselves into a position where they definitely had a total. And then the hitters came in and put several cherries on top. Then with the ball, their weaker skill seam completely stood up when their spinners didn't have a good day. And even though Joe Root was putting the ball wherever he wanted for a long period of time, they hung in there knowing that eventually there was a chance to break through. And even when it looked like Overton and Jofra Archer were going to be able to get there at the end, they held firm, waiting for the opportunity, and then they took them. They had the proper batters. They had the all-rounders. They had the better seam bowlers on the day. They had more spin to offer as well. And when it got tough, they were the team that worked it out. This is a side who's played a lot of 50-over cricket, and that is what it looked like. The team who actually invented it at the other end, that was the team of chaos. England limped and Afghanistan ran. South Africa did not choke. In 1906, South Africa needed 284 to win. They'd only passed 100 in half their test innings at that point. At 105 for 6, it seemed impossible. They fought back but lost another flurry, leaving 45 to win with 1 wicket in hand. At the crease was Dave Norse, who was a capable batter, and he was joined by Percy Sherwell, the only debutant captain keeper and number 11 in Test cricket history. And these two were doing it. A huge crowd in South Africa cheered on every single run. With 8 left, Sherwell edged between slips for 4. Straight after, Norse ran a 3. England bowled 3 dots. All they needed was 1 wicket to tie. Instead, a leg side full toss, boundary, game over. This was Test cricket's first 1-wicket win, and their last partnership was a record for almost 100 years. But it was also something else. This was the first Test match that South Africa had ever won. Buy my book on Amazon, Overthrowing Cricket's Empire.